Listen to the trees, listen to the spirits of the earth, begging us please, stop listening to greed. Listen to the rivers, listen to the sea, listen to the spirits of the deep, begging us please, stop listening to greed. She sent the drought to warn us, she sent the storms to scold us, but we don't listen. We burn and we break and we take and we take and we take till it's too late. Oh, where did the beasts go? Where did the trees go? Where will man go when he has lost the heart beat beneath his feet? Oh, this is our home. She gives us home, Mother Earth. Can you feel her heart beat beneath your feet? Heart beat beneath your feet. Heart beat beneath your feet. Listen to the animals, listen to the trees, listen to the spirits of the earth, begging us please, stop listening to greed. Listen to the rivers, listen to the sea, listen to the spirits of the deep, begging us please, stop listening to greed. Listen to the animals, listen to the trees, listen to the spirits of the earth, begging us please, stop listening to greed. Listen to the rivers, listen to the sea, listen to the spirits of the deep, begging us please, stop listening to greed.
Welcome to this in-person and streaming service for our Unitarian Universalist Church of Idaho Falls. We are about to make this time and place sacred by our presence and intention. My name is Victoria McDonald. I'm assisting the Reverend Kevin Carson. Jessica Kuipers is our streaming musician. Josh Cogliotti is our tech support, and Davette Bogart will present Time for All Ages. So welcome to all. In this sanctuary of hope, you will find a seat at the table and can feast on love and friendship. Wherever your journeys take you, you can always come home to this place. And this is a poem I'd like to read, a short poem by Howard Thurman, a noted theologian who I spoke about a couple of years ago, who lived from 1899 to 1981 and carried Mahatma Gandhi's message of nonviolence to Martin Luther King Jr. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, then the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoners, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people and protections for the creatures, to make music in the heart. Announcements. If you have a joy or concern, little pieces of paper are back where you come into the door, and you'll fill them out and put them, and then I will read them later. If you're streaming, insert them into the chat box, and Josh will read them. Please remind me, Josh, if I forget. Also, you can stay after and help clean up. It would be greatly appreciated.
Not just clean up, Victoria, do the Christmas decorations, taking the Christmas decorations.
Okay, I thought you told me to announce that.
Yes, I know, but you didn't say Christmas.
Oh, well, okay, Christmas decorations, I'm sorry, okay. Okay, yeah, we're sort of beyond that, thank you, okay. Also, please remember that our church is reliant on our donations. The heat inside this church, thankfully, is paid for by our donations. The candles are purchased with our donations. Snow shoveling, lights, our minister and office staff are paid for by our donations. If you're streaming, there's a donate button in the upper right-hand corner, or you can mail a check via Box 50376, Idaho Falls 83405, I'm pretty sure, or treasurer, online, treasurer@idahofallsuu.org. I think that's it. Okay, as we enter sacred space, I encourage you to slow your breathing as I ring the peace bowl 3 times. Breathe deeply into the bottom of your lungs, and your belly should stick out a little bit. Then into your mid-lungs, and finally into the upper section of your lungs. Hold as long as is comfortable, then slowly exhale. This is a calming breath and can be used anytime you feel overwhelmed. Our prelude is First Light by Michael Whalen, played by Jessica Kuipers. Please join me in repeating our covenant as is found in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our chalice lighting, the chalice will be lit by Reverend Kevin as I read words by Dorothea Kaufman found on the Unitarian website. From the very bottom of our existence, we are pervaded with light energy, shining colors to our eyes, warmth to our skin, inspiration to our souls. In this unity of creative sparks and sparkling creation, life unfolds. Let us open our senses to the light within and around us and send it out with shining examples into the world.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning is the poem Letter to Mother Earth by Cleo Voriades. O Mother Earth, at the end of the day and the beginning of each one, all I want to be is closer to you. And even in the moments in between, when I sometimes feel swept into the fullness that life brings, I often long for this moment in the evening when I can come outside and return home into your embrace. I love this ritual, this evening ritual of connecting with you. The air is warm tonight. There's the sweetest little sliver of a new moon, decorating the sky and keeping me company. I lay down and press my heart to yours, my cheek against your cheek, and I feel a pulse pulsating, regenerating me from within, this healing energy that is your perfection. I want for nothing more in this moment. It coaxes a deep exhale. Crickets sing an evening song surrounding me. Their natural hymn could easily be my lullaby if it weren't for the constant movement woven through the air. Cars humming, planes flying, trains moving through their passing below. I hear these sounds contrasting and feel so much of humanity carrying on still in its own will. Your gentle wisdom guides us into rest, and yet we are still moving in some way, internally or externally. Oh, we rise, we fall, we rise, we fall. And as a mother does, you continue to support, spinning us round, lifting us into our collective awakening, giving still all of your beauty, blossoming, blessing us still, even in the face of so much adversity. There is proof that your resilience prevails. The birds, the bees, the flowers, the trees. The way that spring springs forth now with a radiance that is your essence. You give us everything and so much more. Could we finally be lifted up to walk an enlightened path, please? I love you. I want to take care of you always in gratitude. Amen. I invite you to enjoy our opening hymn, number 12, O Life That Maketh All Things New.
From heart to heart, the bright Sorry. Good morning, I'm Davette Bogart, and I'm reading a different story than is listed in the order of service. So I'm going to be reading a book called If I Were the Sunshine by Julie Fogliano and Lauren Long. And I'm going to try and show a couple of pictures because they're really good. So, if I were the sunshine and you were the day, I'd call you hello, and you'd call me stay. If you were the winter, and I were the spring, I'd call you whisper, and you'd call me sing. If I were a flower, and you were a nose, I'd call you sniff, and you'd call me rose. If you were a bird and I were a tree, I'd call you home, and you'd call me home, and I'd call you free. If I were an apple and you were a worm, you'd call me lunch, and I'd call you squirm. If you were a mountain and I were the sky, I'd call you almost, and you'd call me high. If I were the ocean and you were a boat, you'd call me wild, and I'd call you float. If you were the thunder and I was a cloud, you'd call me softly, and I'd call you loud. If I was a silence and you were a sound, I'd call you missing, and you'd call me found. If you were a firefly and I was the dark, you'd call me everywhere, and I'd call you spark. There, actually has it really good. If I were the morning and you were the night, I'd call you tomorrow, and you'd call me sleep tight. Thank you.
I have a few written, and then, do you have any, Josh, to follow? Okay. So, a joy for all the helpers, that's in quotes, in our country. A sorrow for anyone suffering at this time, and this is from Judy Stanley. And from Karen Croft, I've seen Karen back there scribbling. I hope I can read this. Joy. My two Bichon fur babies survived life-threatening illnesses. One from pancreatitis and the other from bladder stones. Very good. Concern. I may be eating at the soup kitchen when I receive my next visa statement for my vet bill. Yes, we'll be thinking of you, but it's all worth it. I have a few concerns of my own. Bob Schaefer, who's a radical cross-country skier, had to have surgery to reconnect his ulna to the rest of his arm. He's a fabulous skier, so I hope for his quick recovery. I also have a joy for my knee because I fell 3 weeks ago while skiing, and it's really doing well, and I can almost walk normally. And my third concern is for my dog who ripped a toenail off 3 weeks ago. She played with her friends yesterday, and her toe started bleeding again, so she is home recovering once again. Okay.
Our reading this morning is from an article called The New Abnormal, an editorial in the winter 2021 edition of Sierra Magazine by Jason Mark. 2021 was the year that the climate crisis became unavoidable. With any luck, if you can call it that, in hindsight, this will be seen as the year that Americans finally, belatedly, came to understand the severity of the crisis. The evidence has been impossible to ignore. A freakish winter deep freeze that shut down much of Texas, another horrific fire season in the West, a historic heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, a spate of deadly floods in the South, quickly followed by Hurricane Ida, a storm so powerful it ended up killing dozens of people in the Northeast, more than 1,000 miles from where it made landfall. According to Pew Research Center, more Americans than ever before say that they are experiencing extreme weather events. And in a separate survey, nearly 8 in 10 people said that such events have made them more concerned about climate change. The alarm bells are clanging. When people try to make sense of these now common unprecedented events, they often describe them as the new normal. But that's a misunderstanding of our predicament. We are not going to reach any kind of new normal unless, that is, we understand the new normal to be a state of constant unpredictability. Rising temperatures aren't leading to reliable shifts like winter slipping into spring and spring folding into summer. The global climate is a finely tuned system, and even small changes in temperature can, as we're witnessing, have unexpected consequences. Climate change is, above all, chaotic, unpredictable, and disorienting, which means we are all going to have to find a way to wrap our minds around the idea of discontinuity. Author Alex Steffen has written that discontinuity is the signature characteristic of the climate epoch. We have created a new era in which past experience loses its value as a guide to decision-making about the future, Steffen writes. The world has become something no human has experienced before. We find ourselves in the midst of global environmental changes that are happening more quickly than we are collectively able to understand them. This, then, is the great challenge of climate discontinuity, to continue to act even in the midst of uncertainty and upheaval. With Earth systems unraveling at a frightening pace, the tasks before us are clear. We need to prepare and adapt for the worst, even as we continue to educate, agitate, and organize for the best possible future. Over the last few decades, a number of scientists and philosophers have suggested that the human impact on the Earth has altered the planet so much that we are living in a fundamentally new geological epoch, especially after we entered the atomic age at the end of World War II. In the early 1980s, the biologist Eugene F. Sturmer coined the term Anthropocene epoch for our new age, literally the age of humans. In the 2000s, the name was further popularized by the atmospheric chemist Paul Crutzen, and in 2016, an official proposal was made to adopt the name by the International Union of Geological Sciences and the International Commission on Stratigraphy, the two international bodies that establish such decisions. To date, no official approval has been granted, but the term has already gained broad popularity. But whether the name becomes official or not, it is becoming painfully clear that being human in the age of humans will present unprecedented challenges and require us to adapt and readjust for the sake of our own species and that of the millions of other species that share the planet with us. Recent discoveries indicate that modern humans have been around for at least 300,000 years. But our story really begins to accelerate roughly 12,000 years ago after the glaciers of the most recent ice age receded. For 12 millennia, we have been comfortably living out the journey of human history in the so-called Holocene epoch, a name which comes from the Greek words meaning entire and recent. In this entirely recent time, we have been very busy, doing things like developing agriculture, domesticating animals, creating art and religion, and inventing new technologies from bronze tools to space travel and nuclear power. But sometime in the last couple of centuries, there was a fundamental change. When exactly it happened is still a matter for debate. For example, some point to the Industrial Revolution, and others to the detonation of the atomic bomb. But after the smoke cleared and the fallout settled, it became apparent that we have entered an entirely and truly unique period in the history of the Earth. For the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of our planet, human beings are leaving a mark so deep that it shows up in the geological record. It is not just a new layer of the archaeological record. We're talking fundamental changes to the chemistry of the soil and the atmosphere, and drastic upheavals in the number and distribution of species. We become the agent of processes that used to be relegated to cataclysmic natural forces or believed to belong to the gods of our imagining. Our footprint is everywhere on the planet, on every continent, and even on the seas and the skies. In roughly 6 million years, we have gone from a collection of bipedal apes in Africa to the billions of humans that dominate the planet today. It is a remarkable story of reproductive success, exploration, adaptation, and sometimes just dumb luck that continues to the present time. The common thread to our success along the way has been our extraordinary capacity to adapt to the new situations we confronted. But unlike our more distant ancestors who could only adapt through the external pressures of evolution, our great talent was learning to alter the world around us in order to survive and to thrive. We learned to make tools and build shelters. We learned to control fire and move the resources we needed as we traveled. Our story is even more remarkable when you consider that in the last 65 million years, the last 6 million years has been one of the most unstable periods of climate in Earth's history. Global temperatures and rainfall have been more variable, and at times enormous ice sheets advanced across the land. No matter what Mother Nature threw at us, we found a way to adapt through our cleverness and resourcefulness. What we could not see until very recently was how our impact on the world had lasting impacts on other species and even entire ecosystems. A human lifetime, even a few generations, is insufficient to see these kinds of impacts. Paleolithic hunters, for example, might have noticed from year to year that the animals they hunted for food were becoming harder to find, and the great herds seemed to be getting smaller. But they could not have imagined that they were driving entire species toward extinction. Science now gives us a deeper sense of time and a deeper understanding of how human beings are impacting not only plants and animals, but even the Earth's climate and the viability of entire ecosystems. Unfortunately, such knowledge does not mean we have the wisdom or the moral courage to change our destructive behaviors. Far too many of us are willing to ignore the facts or even deny them if they require even the smallest adjustments or sacrifices in our consumer lifestyle for the sake of the greater good. But already we are learning the harsh lessons of the new reality we have created. The statistics are humbling. Human beings have impacted an estimated 83% of the Earth's land surface in some fashion. And of course, what happens on land often impacts the world's oceans. We move more soil every year by mining than all the silt transported by all of the Earth's rivers combined. We have dammed or diverted most of the world's major rivers, and we consume more than half of all the accessible freshwater runoff. We have accelerated the rate of extinction across all species to a level that is possibly 10,000 times the expected rate naturally. And uniquely in history, we are responsible for an unprecedented mixing and relocation of species due to global transportation. Just in the ballast of ships on any given day, an estimated 10,000 different species are moving around the globe between continents. A single voyage of a supertanker can bring together species separated by millions of years of geological time and distance. We are getting really good, too good, at making our mark on the planet. And scientists are learning more about the consequences every day. Our very bones and flesh bear witness. Every vertebrate alive today, or that has lived since the beginning of nuclear testing in the 1940s, carries increased amounts of strontium-90 in its bones from the fallout of those tests. And almost every living creature on Earth now has trace amounts of DDT and other man-made toxic compounds in their tissues. And of course, climate change is increasing the number of extreme weather events, storms, floods, fires, and so on, at an alarming rate, with a steady increase in annual multi-billion-dollar impacts around the world. What we are capable of doing to the world is frightening, to say the least. Paul Crutzen, the Dutch chemist that I mentioned earlier, shared the Nobel Prize for discovering the effect of chlorofluorocarbons on the Earth's ozone layer. And he tells the story of a fellow scientist who came home one night. His wife asked how his work was going, and he remarked, "The work is going well, but it looks like it might be the end of the world." We can only hope the world is more resilient than some models predict. But it would seem prudent to err on the side of caution. I'm always amazed, for example, at the argument that we should not do anything about climate change until we reach unanimous consensus about its cause. Even if you don't think human beings are part of the problem, does it really matter why the sea levels are rising around you and you're being swallowed up? Some people have even suggested that we should just give up and start looking for another Earth-like planet and relocate. But even if we did find a suitable planet and somehow launched a fleet of spaceships to colonize it, how would we ever reproduce the complex web of life upon which our one species depends? And what about all the other species anyway? I'm skeptical we could find the right mixture of microbial life and plants and animals to ever make a place more than a pale imitation of life on Earth. We might survive, but we might wish we hadn't. Now, admittedly, I've painted a pretty bleak picture of the Anthropocene so far. It makes me a little nostalgic for the old Earth First slogan, "Back to the Pleistocene." Perhaps returning to our hunter-gatherer roots may be a solution, but I would sure like to take along a first aid kit and some antibiotics and a few other modern conveniences. As we enter this new epoch, it is easy to look around and see the negative impact humanity is having on the world and fall into despair. But before we lose hope, I think it is important to step back and pause for a moment and reassess the implication of this new age of humans. I agree with the paleoanthropologist Rick Potts, who said, "I've come to see the Anthropocene not as a debate about a new geological era, but rather as a way of thinking about our identity and what it will mean to be human in the future." And so our thought experiment here focuses less on problems, less on piecemeal solutions to the harm people may induce, and more on the principles that may guide meaningful pathways as we continue to alter the world and ourselves. As Potts suggests, I believe it is important to understand the bigger picture, that we have entered a new era of thinking about what it means to be human, whether we like it or not. This shift in our thinking is more fundamental to what the Anthropocene represents than anything specific to the physical world. Even outside of the scientific community, most of the world now talks about issues like climate change, renewable energy, and sustainable development. We have international organizations and treaties that are acknowledging the reality of our new current predicament. And even those who wish to deny the level of human impact are forced to at least engage in the conversation. Even if our politicians succeeded in removing all the data on climate change from government websites, there are millions of people who still know what is going on. And thankfully, there are other nations to take the lead if our own leaders will not. And there are millions of activists around the world, especially among the youth and young adults, who support science and are demanding action on environmental issues. This is a global conversation, and there is already an overwhelming shift in thinking worldwide. Granted, we are a long way from developing the sense of an ecological transhuman identity on a large scale that I believe will ultimately save us. But we have come far already. Last month, when I spoke about the life and work of Thomas Berry, I emphasized his call to educate the world about a new sacred story as being fundamental to the way forward. Our old sacred stories that speak of our dominion over nature and our special status as something apart from nature are a large part of what got us into this mess in the first place. And they no longer provide a plausible context for living in today's world. What we need to embrace is a new sacred story that renews our sense of wonder and awe within an ecological understanding of what it means to be human. And this reflects this Anthropocene shift in thinking. As Thomas Berry said, we will recover our sense of wonder and our sense of the sacred only if we appreciate the universe beyond ourselves as a revelatory experience of that numinous presence whence all things come into being. The universe is the primary sacred reality. Berry was optimistic that we could bring about this sacred evolution in human understanding. And he proposed we call the new period of Earth's history the Ecozoic era, a new age of ecological thinking that moves us beyond the Cenozoic era of the last 65 million years. So far, the scientific community hasn't embraced the grander idea of an Ecozoic era, but maybe it should. In geological timelines, the largest division is super-eon, followed by eon, era, period, and epoch. And thus the Anthropocene epoch is considered a less dramatic shift. To adopt the idea of a new Ecozoic era would be a really bold move. And perhaps the psychic connotations of symbolically identifying such a moment of profound change would help better bolster the behavioral changes we are desperately in need of. But no matter what we call the current time in Earth's history, it is clear that we have a moral obligation to change our thinking and our actions. We are not the divinely appointed masters of the world, free to use and abuse the Earth's community and resources with reckless impunity. But neither are we simply one of many animal species that is blissfully unaware of the bigger picture, subject to the whims of Mother Nature. It is a fact that we are part of an interdependent web of all existence that stretches back billions of years into the past. But we have evolved into conscious beings. We have the unique, so far as we know, capacity for self-reflection. We are aware of our own mortality. We can see the damage our species inflicts on the web of life, even as we alter the world to suit our immediate needs. We are the very consciousness of Earth, and we should be humbled by the awesome responsibility that comes with the job. We just need to develop the ethics and moral courage to take this responsibility seriously. I believe Thomas Berry was absolutely correct that the great work of our time is to instill a deep sense of ecological identity in our understanding of what it means to be human in this age of humans. Until a majority of the world's population begins to feel a profound spiritual connection to the natural world, it will be hard to find the balance that leads to a sustainable, viable future for humankind. It will be hard to protect species from premature extinction and promote the biodiversity that is so important to the overall health of the planet and our own future. It will take small actions by each of us and big actions by the global community. The biologist Edward O. Wilson, who recently passed away, proposed, for example, that we must set aside at least half of all the land on Earth for nature to preserve biodiversity. It is hard to imagine that we will ever be able to foster the international cooperation and political will to make such a moral choice. But there are already efforts in several countries to set aside 30 to 50% of the land to make this a reality. If you think changing the world like this is just too improbable, just consider how ridiculously improbable it is that you are sitting here this morning entertaining such thoughts. Just think of the ancient stars that had to be born and die just to make the elements that form the earth and every cell in your body. Think about our good fortune that the ancient earth had the right combination of elements for life to emerge and evolve in the first place. Think about how we represent the single surviving lineage of the handful of bipedal apes that evolved in Africa. Think about the plagues and wars that our species has survived to make it this far. Life, at its very core, is improbable. So let us count ourselves lucky to be alive in the Anthropocene epoch, a time of great possibilities. Let us lean into the great challenge of climate discontinuity to continue to act even in the midst of uncertainty and upheaval. Let us accept our responsibility to prepare and adapt for the worst, even as we continue to educate, agitate, and organize for the best possible future. Being truly human in the age of humans means we must appreciate our place within the interdependent web of life and make conscious choices that reflect this understanding. In this season of New Year's resolutions, let us resolve to do some small things and perhaps a big thing or two to make the planet a little better than we found it. Please enjoy our closing hymn, number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. Our closing words are from the Crypto Naturalist podcast site. The water in your body is just visiting. It was a thunderstorm a week ago. It will be ocean soon enough. Most of your cells come and go like morning dew. We are more weather pattern than stone monument. Sunlight on mist, summer lightning. Your choices outweigh your substance.
Please join me in repeating the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now our postlude, Madrona by David Lanz and played by Jessica.